It is Monday morning, and we had an impressive slate of games over the NHL weekend. Justin Pooni with NorthStar Bets, very own Steven Psihogios. Stevie, we were just talking about off air. What a weekend it was in the NHL. And the Toronto Maple Leafs were at the center of the hockey world's attention on Saturday night as the Edmonton Oilers, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl came to town. And the Leafs, let's face it, they played a pretty good game, a good 45 minutes they played, getting up to a 5-0 lead. Now, it got kind of close at the end, very close. And then, of course, Austin Matthews scores his first empty netter of the season. Ilya Samsonov did get hurt, but it came out it wasn't as bad as expected. The Leafs then traveled to Carolina last night, where they lost 2-1 to one of the better teams in a game that I feel like it was one of those games you get the calendar, you kind of circle, but that's a given loss already. But Stevie, what were some of your key takeaways from the Toronto Maple Leafs, particularly this weekend?
Well, I think stock is up in Leafland after this past weekend. I know they
Mhm.
only got 2 of 4 points, but I'm pretty sure, I was talking to some family members of mine who are Leaf fans, and they were very
Mhm.
happy with how they looked on Saturday night, and like the Leafs just kind of brushed off the Sunday night game. But in all honesty, it is a positive. Even in the loss
Right.
yesterday, I thought Joseph Woll looked really good, which is
Mhm.
something you need to see coming down the stretch because his results so far, mind you, he's been getting the tougher assignments between him
Mhm.
and Samsonov. His results have been a little shaky. So I think getting that strong performance out of him, he kept them in that game for long stretches. I didn't think they had their best hockey, the Leafs, until the third period in that contest. So all in all, a positive, even in a loss. And then on Saturday night, I mean, they look great. It wouldn't be a Leafs game if it wasn't interesting at some point. And Edmonton was very close to really making that a hockey game, but they didn't let Hyman get 50 goals in Toronto, which would have been the most Leafs outcome, and they got the 2 points. So an
Mhm.
up weekend for the Maple Leafs, and if you're looking around the standings, you're pretty happy to see Boston losing and Florida. I mean, they snapped their 4-game losing streak yesterday, but it was a 4-game losing streak they were riding heading into Sunday's action.
Yeah, look, when it comes to the Leafs game against the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday, getting out to a 5-0 lead like that, and I think what was critical and really set the tone was that first penalty kill, where the Oilers were buzzing, snapping the puck around, and the Leafs somehow held on and they didn't allow a goal. Samsonov made some big saves, and that kind of set the tone and let the Leafs kind of ease into the game. What could be said more so about Bobby McMahon, Pontus Holmberg, guys with 2 goals apiece? Bobby McMahon has become kind of an unsung hero for the Toronto Maple Leafs this season. I do still believe, though, that defense core is going to need some work because you saw it in that third period. Edmonton really piled it on. They were hemmed in their end for pretty much the entirety of that third period. And if it wasn't for a couple posts, I think Nugent Hopkins hit a post, Corey Perry hit a post. We could be singing a different tune, right? Um, I do agree with you, though. I think last night on Sunday was Joseph Woll's best performance since he's come back from injury. He looked calm, composed, and he looked in charge in that. Now, the offense didn't really help out at all. They didn't really do much, but I think that's something that can be built upon. And now, who knows? Maybe a couple of days off for Samsonov and he's fine. Maybe the Leafs are just hiding something. But that's going to be an interesting debate going forward. As of right now, who would be your game one starter for the Toronto Maple Leafs? I say it's Ilya Samsonov. I think he's got the resume. He's had a larger amount of the work. He's done, he's more in control of his game, I feel, than Joseph Woll. So that's why he would be my game one starter. But what says you?
I honestly would go with Wall. I would go with
Hmm.
Wall. I think this is the guy that you're positioning to be the goaltender moving forward.
Right.
Samsonov, like I said, he's kind of drawn a lot of the lower teams during this stretch. So it's easier to look at his numbers and see
Mhm.
that they have been better. Wall, he got Boston twice. He was the guy in net for both
Yep.
those games, right? That they went with him in those matchups. So to me, I would go with Wall. I think I just, in general, you want to
Mhm.
build around this guy and give him confidence. I would go with him, but it's a short leash. It's a short
Right.
leash. If it's neither of these guys have earned the benefit of the doubt here between the pipes. I think if Toronto's smart, one
Mhm.
bad game, you go to the other guy because neither has really solidified themselves at any point this year. You've had Samsonov, who's had a trip to the minors, and Wall has missed a lot of time due to injury. Neither of these guys have really carried the mail for you this year.
Right.
So there's no reason to be overly loyal to either if one falters in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Look, I think that's going to be regardless of whoever they play in the first round, there's going to be a disadvantage in net. The whether it's Swayman in Boston, Bobrovsky in Florida, hell, Shesterkin in New York, right? They're gonna
Yeah.
have a mismatch for majority of the pretty much the entire playoffs, right? That to me is going to be the Achilles heel. I think I understand what you're saying about Wall getting the tougher matchups. Um, I just feel like the team has more confidence in Samsonov than they do in Wall, and that's a big factor, right? On which guy that you're going to put in the net is there because guys will then be willing to take that extra leap of faith as a defenseman and pinch a little bit more because you have a guy who you trust behind you. But let's switch over to the Edmonton Oilers quickly before we get into our other stuff. We were singing their praises heavy, heavy. On the last time we spoke, and they go to Toronto, lose. Leon Draisaitl, Evander Kane get into it. Evander Kane doesn't play last night in Ottawa with a maintenance day. They lose again to Ottawa. Is there cause for concern for the Oilers, or was this just a bad weekend? Chalk it up to that.
I think it's just a bad weekend, and
Mm,
you mentioned the spat between Draisaitl and Kane. I don't
mhm,
think it's the worst thing in the world to have guys who want to win that battle, kind of pushing each other a little bit and taking exception with stuff that they might not see as being up to standard. So I don't view that as entirely as a negative. I think Edmonton for a large part of the season has really the winning streak was nice, but since then, not that they've played poorly, but there has been a lot to play for. Like they're not going to catch the Canucks here.
mhm.
It was kind of like a feverish pipe dream that they were last week when we were talking about it. It's not going to happen. Vancouver's played well, even without Demko. So they're kind of stuck in that number two spot. There's a little bit of a lack of motivation. I think once the playoffs roll around, you're going to see a different team. It's just some of these things. It's like you don't see it, but you have to have faith in it. It's like what I've been saying all year long about the Golden Knights and the Panthers. Everyone, wants to put them at the top of the list, but I said, just wait. These teams, they played a lot of hockey last year. Just wait until we get later in the season. You're going to see some differences, and both teams really haven't looked sharp as of late.
I agree. Look, when I look at the Edmonton Oilers, I saw that Hockey Night kind of really put that Kane dry sort of thing on display. Um, I think it's two guys, and now Evander Kane hasn't scored in 15, 16, 17 games now, right? He's struggling a whole lot. Leon Draisaitl continues to do what Leon Draisaitl does. And again, these are two highly competitive guys, high emotion guys, and that just happens in the battle of a game, right? Is it going to be a more on display in a game in Toronto? Yes. Do I still think the Edmonton Oilers right now, if I was to pick a team to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals out of the West, I still think it's the Edmonton Oilers. I just think that the way that now Evan Bouchard looked horrible on Saturday and horrible this weekend, but I think they just have gone through so much adversity. They've played so much better. Um, I still believe that McDavid and Drysaitel and that crew can, carry this team to the Stanley Cup Finals.
I don't disagree with you. I
Mhm.
agree. Sometimes we go back and forth, Canucks, Bruins. We got a lot. Sometimes it feels like we got nothing in common. But I do
Yeah.
agree with you in the sense that I got Edmonton right on that short list. I've been saying it for a long time. Edmonton, Dallas. Those are the two teams right now. Those are the two horses I like to come
Mhm.
to go into the Western Conference Final. One of them to come out and play in the Stanley Cup Final. Edmonton, I'm not worried about. If you're an Oilers fan and you're panicking, don't panic. Like you're not as bad as a blowout loss to the Leafs and then a loss to the Ottawa Senators the next day. This team's going to rebound and be just fine.
Mhm. Well, you think about it, right? I feel for a team like the Winnipeg Jets, who now look like are going to be probably playing the Dallas Stars in the first round, and that right there is something that scares me because I think Dallas walks right through Winnipeg with ease. And quite frankly, I think they have the advantage in net and on defense over the Colorado Avalanche. So that might set up a Western Conference final between the Dallas Stars and the Edmonton Oilers, which I think would be a coin flip.
Here's an interesting thought experiment for you, Justin.
Yes.
If you had to face one of these three teams in the first round of the playoffs, which team would you pick? Would you pick the Winnipeg Jets? Would you pick the Nashville Predators? Or would you pick the Vegas Golden Knights? If you had to pick one of those three,
And
who
I'm a
would be
Canucks
the
fan,
team?
right? And I'm a Canucks
And you're a
fan,
Canucks fan.
which
And
I
you're a
am.
Canucks fan. Yeah.
Um,
Is
I would
perhaps
say
getting
Vegas. I would say Vegas. I would say Vegas. I
you
although I
would
don't want
Vegas
to
is
play
your pick, eh?
The way Nashville, I was saying for the longest time that Nashville's just been a really good story. They've on this magical run. It's going to end. They're going to flame out in the playoffs. But dude, this is more than that now, man. They're a legit team, and they're going to cause some hell to whoever they play in the first round of the playoffs. It would not surprise me whatsoever if they win a first round series against a Colorado or a Vancouver. Now, for my sake, I'm hoping that the Canucks win that. But Nashville scares me a whole lot. Winnipeg is a tough physical team that I think with Rick Bowness there, they will, and that home crowd advantage is going that home crowd is going to help them win some games. So none of those are an easy choice, but right now Vegas is the squad that, like we talked about, they don't look as dominant as they have before, and now as we're inching closer to the playoffs, can they just flip the switch once again and go on another magical run? Generally, the magical run is a once in a blue moon, and I think I don't know if it's going to come back again this year.
No, it's tougher as an 8 seed, right? This is
Mhm.
not being the number 1, having home ice advantage throughout, that type
Yeah,
of advantage. This is now having to go on the road every single series, and we've talked about this too. The difference between playing at home for Vegas and playing on the road is seismic. They've lost 4 of their last 5 road games, and that road record, you look at it, not as pretty as the home record. So,
well,
you tell me that is going to make a major difference come
it
playoff time.
reminds me of the 2010, 2011 Chicago Blackhawks, the defending Cup champs, squeak into the playoffs, end up facing the President's Trophy winner, the Canucks, and losing in the first round in 7 games. So fingers crossed that if that is the situation with the Canucks, history does repeat itself. Um, let's go back to the Eastern Conference. Pittsburgh Penguins pretty much out of the playoffs. They're done. Biggest question is going to be Captain Sidney Crosby and what his future is with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Does he re-up on another short-term deal, just ensuring that he stays in Pittsburgh? Or does he and his team go to Kyle Dubas and they say, you know what, we don't want to be part of a rebuild. We want one more kick at the Canada Stanley Cup and go to a contender. What do you think transpires with number 87?
It's gonna be the most fascinating talking point of the offseason, but bar none. And
Mhm.
you know what? The rumors that are gonna circulate, I can already tell you what's gonna happen. It's gonna be Colorado. The Avalanche make a push here, right? Why not Colorado? He's good buddies with McKinnon. This is a Stanley Cup team. The Avalanche are really desperate for center help. Help. Who knows how long Gabriel Landeskog is going to be out? I think
Mhm.
the Avalanche are going to be the team that you hear most closely linked to Crosby. And it's the Penguins at this point, you just have to do whatever Crosby tells you. If he wants to stay, you're
Yeah.
not trading him. And if he wants to go, you move him to wherever he wants to go. He's earned that kind of cachet and respect with the Penguins. He's been the best player of his generation. So it's going to be the most fascinating storyline to watch because, and what I think makes it even more interesting
Yeah.
is that Crosby is a player who is just shrouded in secrecy and privacy. We really don't know a lot about Sidney Crosby. And I think figuring out and hearing reports this offseason of this or that, I think there's going to be a lot of smoke because not a lot gets out when we're talking about Sidney Crosby.
I can't believe you disconsidered my Vancouver Canucks. Look, who's their GM and their president of hockey ops? Patrick Alvin
Okay.
Rutherford. Who they win back-to-back Stanley Cups with? Sidney Crosby. Who's the head coach of the Vancouver Canucks? Rick Tocchet. Who was an assistant coach on those Pittsburgh teams? Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, yeah, it's Rick talk. Yeah, Rick talking
Sergei
with Crosby. Hey, hey.
Gonchar played with Sidney Crosby. He's now an assistant coach in Pittsburgh. Mike Yeo is an assistant coach on the Canucks. He was with Crosby in Pittsburgh. I'm just saying there could be a match made in
Yeah.
heaven right there, Stevie. But in all seriousness, I do think that Crosby just stays in Pittsburgh. I don't see him wanting to leave. I see him being a guy that's loyal to that organization, and he's going to play his full career out there. He saved this franchise when he came in. Remember, they were on the verge of bankruptcy, leaving. He comes, they end up winning the Stanley Cup. They build a new arena. They win another 2 cups. They win to 20 straight playoffs. This is just a part of the course. When you give up so many future assets and you push and push every year, this is bound to happen. Saw it happen in Detroit. Saw it happen in these other places as well. I think Crosby stays in Pittsburgh. I just don't see him leaving because also, why would you make them re-sign Malkin and Letang if you were going to walk out the next year? So I think those 3 guys are going to stay in Pittsburgh. They're going to retire in Pittsburgh. I just don't see Crosby doing it whatsoever.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. I think especially the Malkin and Letang thing, roping those
Mm,
guys back in for another year and making sure that they stuck around because they could have left.
yeah.
That was the talk was that they could only keep one or the other, and both decided
Mm,
to stay. So I do think with Crosby being the type of guy he is the face of the Penguins. I also don't see it, but I do expect that to be the biggest topic of the off season is where's Crosby going to go? Because let's be honest, it's tough. It's tough
mhm,
watching him score 4 points and the Penguins
mm,
be up
yeah,
4-0 against the Avalanche, only to lose in that game. So I think it's just tough, and I'm sure it's taking its toll on Crosby because this guy's a winner, and
mhm.
he's all he's done is won throughout his career. So to now lose, especially in the type of ways the Penguins are losing these days, is hard. So I do think that is where you'll hear a lot of smoke and rumors about where Crosby wants to play next year.
Well, it's all it's going to be very interesting. That I do agree. There's going to be a lot of smoke and a lot of fire and a lot of calls made to Kyle Dubas. But tonight, two games on the NHL slate. The Vegas Golden Knights take on the St. Louis Blues, who are only 4 points behind them in the standings. A very, very big matchup. Then we have the LA Kings going to Vancouver, where the Canucks can wrap up the Pacific Division title. What are your best bets for the tonight's NHL slate, Stevie?
Well, you'll like to hear this. I'm fading two Los Angeles Kings. I'm fading
Hmm.
Philip Deneau and Trevor Moore. Trevor Moore to not score a point, minus 127. A little bit of juice, but I do think it's worth the squeeze. Moore, he's been a productive player, but you look at that Kings team total for tonight, it's sitting at 2.5 goals. So with NorthStar Bets not expecting much offense from LA, I'm also not expecting much offense from LA. Deneau, another King I'm looking to fade tonight. He's had a pretty decent year too, 42 points in 70 games, but with the matchup being tough, Casey DeSmith, 917 save percentage in the month of March. He's been
Yep.
really solid, especially in the absence of Thatcher Demko. I'm fading Deneau to not score a point at minus 132. And then lastly, look, I gave you a couple picks with some juice. Now let's go for a plus money dog.
Ooh.
The St. Louis Blues at home. They've been red hot. They've won 6 of their last 7. They face a Golden Knights team that I mentioned earlier has lost 4 of their last 5 on the road. Everyone wants to talk about how great this Vegas team is going to be in the playoffs. Let's see if they get there. I'm betting on a Blues win tonight. I like St. Louis money line at plus 120. If they win, they go 2 points behind Vegas in
Mhm.
the race for that final wild card spot.
It's surely going to be exciting, and I will definitely be cheering for the St. Louis Blues tonight. Stevie, thank you so much, my friend, and we'll talk again very shortly.
Yes, looking forward to it, Justin. Thanks again for having me.